What's going on, fellow nerds? Welcome to the Midwest Marvel Podcast. On today's episode, we are giving our Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 full review. Just as an FYI, there will be spoilers, heavy spoilers in this episode. We're holding nothing back. So if you have not seen Guardians 3 and you care about spoilers, save this episode, come back to it later after you've watched it. Tell us what you think. But we're going to get into the entire movie and talk about everything regarding Guardians 3. It's been a couple weeks. We've wanted to wait for you guys to get a chance to see this movie before we dove in and spoiled it. So I'm excited for it. I'm your host, Nick Adams. Joining me today, super pumped about it. We have a special guest co-host. It's actually my brother-in-law. His name is David Harrigan.
What's up? Happy to be here. Long-time listener, first-time
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so Zeke is still alive. Zeke's still here. Our schedule just have had a terrible time coordinating lately. It's unfortunate. We wish he could be here. We would have done a three-person podcast if we could have, but unfortunately, we weren't able to make it work. So David is here. We actually saw Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 together, so we got to experience this with one another, and so it felt only right that we ended up talking about the movie together on the podcast.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how maybe some of our ideas shifted because neither of us have seen it a second time. So
no, I'm hoping to this week.
Yeah, and I don't know when I will get a chance to, but
I know
I do. So
these little things running around our house is called kids.
Children.
Give a severe hindrance to that. It changes It changes the game.
For sure. I'm ready to see it again, but all of my memories will have to serve me in this podcast.
Yeah.
So
I think it'll be. I've tried to brush up on it. So, all right. Well, we're going to get into it in just a second. Before we do, we're just going to spend the whole episode being Guardians 3 stuff. But before we do, just some general news. We always like to start with general Marvel news if anything happens that week. Not a whole lot this week, but one thing that did make headlines that's interesting is the head writer for Avengers: The Kang Dynasty is done. Like he is off the movie. They don't know if he got fired or written off or what. I'm assuming they parted ways because the head writer for Avengers: Kang Dynasty is actually, his name's Jeff Loveness. He's the same writer that did Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. And I have to imagine after that movie and the reception that got, I have to imagine they were just like, yeah, man, sorry, you're not the one.
Yeah, that's wild though, because it feels like with that and then with possibly recasting of Kang, like
It's a lot going on.
We could see a totally different like movie than what they would have expected. Yeah, it's crazy.
I know. Yeah, it's and granted, there's no shortage of really great actors that could play Kang if it came down to it. It is a bummer. Like Jonathan Majors just has such a charisma about him on screen. But if they need to, I fully trust. I mean, Marvel seems to be able to always bring in the heavy hitters when it comes to the roles that they really want to focus on. So I have a couple people. I don't think we've ever talked about this before. For me, one of my biggest picks, I feel like John Boyega from the Star Wars franchise. He played Finn in the new sequels. I feel like he'd be a fantastic Kang. I think he'd be great. I've seen him in a couple different films now. I've seen him in some serious films. And
I've seen him in Star Wars.
Yeah, so guy's got some absolute just great acting chops. So I feel like he could kill it. And there's obviously a lot of others. I don't know if you've ever given that thought as to who you thought Kang should get recast as, if that ended up happening.
You got to get somebody who can play so many different roles and is so fluid in how they act.
Right.
And I'm like,
yeah, they got to have range.
Here's the problem. You'd have to get somebody who, it would be hard to get someone who isn't already mainstream.
Yeah.
Already isn't like a really well-known actor from another franchise or something like that. So that's the trouble that I would have to find someone of that level.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely tough. But yeah, so either way, though, the writer is out, which I think is a good thing. Quantumania was fine. I thought it was fun, but it's middle of the road at best for me. And I think you're roughly around the same in terms of where you would place it.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed it. I think it was the worst of the Ant-Man movies, personally.
I'm
Um,
still not sure if it's better than Wasp or not for me. I definitely put Ant-Man
I
1
like
above it
Wasp.
by far.
Actually, I have Quantumania under like probably middle, like the middle threshold,
Yeah,
and
bottom half.
bottom half. And I think actually I probably have Ant-Man and the Wasp under, but just barely. I have Ant-Man and the Wasp that like over it. I thought that was a funnier movie, and I think apart from like the bad guy situation in the movie, it was a good movie.
You're talking Ant-Man and the Wasp, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Honestly, yeah, that's a pretty good take. Yeah, because I feel like Quantumania was kind of the opposite. I feel like the bad guy situation carried that movie, and the rest of it was just kind of like, eh.
Yeah.
Okay, like sure, it looked cool. Parts looked cool, but it was just the pacing was so weird. There was no emotional depth whatsoever in the movie. Felt like stakes weren't real. I don't know.
It did. I completely agree. And I think the problem was entirely with either I think probably more with directing, but also
Yeah,
probably right because I feel um like Kang should have felt the gravity of Kang like that you felt in Loki just wasn't there.
no, no,
You know,
not
and
at
I
all.
yeah, I don't think it was a problem with acting. I think it was a problem with
No,
the way that it was probably written,
yeah.
not even the fault of the director even either. I think it was mostly with how it was written.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the big problems with, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but one of the big problems with Kang and Quantumania, and one of the things that worked really well for the High Evolutionary in Guardians 3 is that Quantumania had a lot of tell, don't show when it came to Kang. They
Yes.
told us a lot about the things that he did. We didn't see any of it. Whereas High Evolutionary, we saw
Yeah.
everything, and that made us hate that man so much, and it made us like fear him in a way.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I can't wait till we talk about that. I don't want to jump
oh,
too much.
yeah.
Actually, I had a point similar to that, so it'll be interesting
Oh,
to get your thoughts. I think we're
yeah.
agreeing on that.
Yeah. But yeah, so we'll see what happens. I don't know how I part of me thinks that they'll wait to assign that writer until they figure out what's happening with this Jonathan Majors thing. That would just make sense. Like your biggest actor in the franchise, you should probably know what's happening with him before you assign writers to the movie he's going to be on.
Yeah. 100.
So I'll be curious to see who takes it over. I would love to see like the same guys. It was two guys wrote Infinity War, Endgame, and Civil War. Bring those dudes back.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah. Aren't
that
they
would be
brothers?
fine.
Who are they? What was
Their
it?
names are Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely. So
Oh.
they're not directors. They're
Oh, those are the
strictly
writers, not
writers.
the directors. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
not the
directors
Russo
are the
brothers.
brothers. The Russo brothers. That's right.
So the
Yep.
director for the movie, Kang Dynasty, is gosh, I forget his name, but he directed Shang-Chi. So I'm not mad about that at all.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes
I thought
sense.
that was a great movie and really well directed.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, bring those guys on. That would be cool. I'd also love to see Ryan Coogler get a crack at a bigger scale movie like that, the Wakanda Forever and Black Panther director, because he wrote both those movies as well. So I'd like to see him get a
Oh,
crack at
that's
that.
cool.
But
Yeah. He seems to have a unique style though, so I wonder how that would transition to like a to one of
yeah,
those.
a movie that's scaled that large.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to be able to balance. Like you have to balance a lot of things on
It's a
those
totally
movies.
it's a totally different style. Like both the Wakanda movies were very like emotional and in the moment kind of movies.
They
I
were
felt
also
like.
very story driven
Yeah.
versus which is good. Like he wrote it fantastically, but in
Yes.
an Avengers movie, like it has to not just be story driven, it has to be like very action heavy as well. Like you need
Yeah.
both. Which not saying Coogler can't do that, but yeah, you're right. Like those movies both had a very specific style of how they were done.
Yeah. Yep. 100%.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to my favorite segment that we've started. This is newer, but we call it agree disagree. We used to call it hot takes. Now I just think it agree disagree because not all these opinions are hot takes. It's just getting spur of the moment thoughts on a certain topic or statement regarding the MCU. So all these have to do with Guardians of the Galaxy in some way, shape, or form. And so I think 6 statements here. So what I'll do is I'll read the statement out and then I'll give it a second, count down 3, 2, 1. We have an agree, disagree sheet we'll each hold up in front of us. and I'll make sure I verbalize it because the first time we did this, I forgot that this was also a podcast and not just a YouTube video. And so I didn't say what any of us did. And anybody listening is probably like, wait, did they agree? Did they disagree? So, all right. You got your sheet of paper ready?
I got my sheet.
All right, here we go. First statement. James Gunn is the best comic book movie director of all time. James Gunn's the best comic book movie director of all time. 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree as well.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I wasn't sure where you're gonna go with that. Yeah, I disagreed. David disagreed.
We'll see. That might change depending on what he does in the DC world, but
yeah,
I think,
very well could. He's got a Superman movie coming up too.
so I think that's actually the detriment. I think Guardians, if you just had Guardians as his portfolio, then it's a go for me. But you don't. Now I haven't seen what's
Suicide Squad, Peacemaker.
No, Peacemaker. I heard an interview that people like it's incredible. So
yeah, Peacemaker is very good. His Suicide Squad is very good too. So
I wasn't a huge fan of Suicide Squad, but that's not my style of movie. So,
yeah. I think he's on the Mount Rushmore for sure. If I'm picking top 4 comic book movie directors, he's easily on the Mount Rushmore for me.
Yeah. I would say for me, it probably the top 3 are Russo brothers, Christopher Nolan.
Yep.
And
it's between I think I have Gunn as my third.
I don't that order.
I don't know if I have Nolan or the Russo brothers first. You could go either way.
Russo brothers are first. Christopher Nolan, the Batman trilogy was incredible, but let's be honest, so much of that was bolstered by Heath Ledger, and whoever played Batman.
Christian Bale.
Bale.
So, I don't know, man, because I mean, Chris Nolan, he's that man slays whatever he directs.
Everything he directs, but I will say those movies, like how much of it, that's the hard part. How do you say how much of that was directing versus how much was just incredible character choice, I
think his way of storytelling and really amplified those movies. Like I think they would have been good no matter what with those castings, but I think the way he chooses to storytell and like the cinematography behind his movies, like he's known pretty well for that. One of
my favorite movies of all time is The Prestige. So,
dude, I still haven't seen that. I keep telling Carla we need to see it. No, and I know it's one of the greatest movies ever.
It is so incredible. It might be my favorite Nolan movie.
Yeah, I've heard it's unbelievable, and it's been out for a long, long time.
Because everything he hits, everything he does is a banger, and
it is.
Nobody would say that's their favorite one out of all of the stuff he does, but for me, I think
I see a lot of people put it up there, though. I feel like I see that movie get a lot of love.
It's a good movie,
and I don't know how I haven't seen that. Yeah, I kind of. Oh man,
I've never seen a movie have so many foreshadowing, like events or as that movie. So
like you go back and watch it again, you're like, how did I miss anything? Like it was all there in front of me.
Yeah, like the first time I watched it, we spent 45 minutes afterward pointing to everything that like, oh, that meant that point to the end. That like was a good reveal.
When movies do that, it's so cool.
Cool.
Yeah. I think I would have Russo brothers, Nolan, Gunn. Russo brothers, Nolan, Gunn. Oh yeah, I mean, because Russos did Infinity War, Endgame, Winter Soldier, and Civil War, dude. Like that is those are four of what most people would consider the top 10 MCU movies. Like,
I agree.
That's an insane run. That's unreal. All right, here we go with the next statement. This is true of you personally. You're more emotionally attached to the Guardians of the Galaxy than you are the Avengers. 3, 2, 1. Agree. See, I thought you were gonna say agree on that one. I disagreed. David agreed.
Yep.
So, dude, this was tough because James Gunn creates the most emotional moments in the MCU, period. Like that man is a wizard when it comes to that. So in that sense, yes. But also when I think of like the original 6 in the journey from Avengers to Ultron to Infinity War to Endgame and the emotional journey that was and the attachment I had at the end of Endgame, I don't know if anything will top that. Now, if you're asking current Avengers, we don't even know what that team is. But if you're looking at like the original six, it's close. But I feel like I probably give the nod to the original Avengers. But at this point, like, yeah, I'm arguing myself out of it because my argument was like, oh, well, I had like 10 years with the Avengers. We've had 10 years with the Guardians. That movie came out in like 2015, I think, 2014. Yeah. So like, we're right there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the you kind of made my argument for me. I think the Guardians it's just a more emotional, like when you have a small group of people. Like I think any trilogy you have to kind of put up against any trilogy, and rather than like the Avengers, because the truth is with the Avengers you have so many people coming in and out You don't really get to. So you have to think of the Captain America trilogies and like the Spider-Man trilogy. Probably the closest to me is Spider-Man. Like to what hot take? Okay, here's a hot take. The Spider-Man dying in Infinity War was more emotional to me than Tony Stark dying in Endgame.
Oh, see, I disagree, and my hot take. That's so funny that your hot take, because my hot take is that Spider-Man dying in Infinity War wasn't that emotional at all. That's my hot take.
Wow. Okay.
And the only reason I say that is because, at least in my mind, I hoped that everyone was coming back. I'm like, there's no way Spider-Man's done. They just introduced this kid. Like, he's coming back. And so in my mind, I'm like, yeah, it was an emotional death, but like, he's coming back.
Yeah, here's the thing though. Like for me, this will take us down a super long rabbit hole, so we don't have to. But I am not a I think Iron Man is great, but I never had the attachment to Iron Man that a lot of people did. So like for me,
fair.
Iron Man is pretty low on the totem pole of like characters, which is crazy because like most people's like GOAT like MCU characters. So
well, Carly, my wife would completely agree with you because she hates Iron Man. She hates his cockiness and arrogance, which I love that about him. I think that's part of what makes him so good. So she would agree. She has no emotional attachment to Tony Stark.
I agree that I love the way that he is methodical and intelligent, and I love his banter and
like, his wittiness,
pride, his wittiness, all that. Right. I think that makes his character incredible. I just don't appeal that kind of character. Doesn't appeal to me as much as like a Spider-Man or like a Captain America, right? Like even Bucky, like the Winter Soldier, like redemption kind of. You know.
No, I totally get that.
Yeah. Whole other thing. But so for me, and going back to the Spider-Man situation, like the Spider-Man, you're right. Like it was kind of like, hey, we can't. Like, yeah, they're gonna come back. But in the moment, so
it was an emotional moment for sure.
It was an emotional moment because I think that's what Infinity War did so well, which we'll get to. But why I have it so ranked so high is my number one. I'll just throw it out there.
Yeah.
But like, there's so many things that are great about it, but one of the things is it shocked you from the beginning to the end.
Yep.
It was like you did not know what was going to happen. Like the fact that they lost blew my mind.
Yeah.
Like
most shocking theater experience I've ever had.
Exactly. And so you didn't know what was going to happen, like even though you thought, they should come back, like truthfully, because everything else, like they lost.
Yeah.
Like, what?
You did not expect them to actually, like, you thought maybe he would get some punches in. Like you did not think like they would full out lose. Like, because I remember sitting there watching the movie, and as he's gathering all the Infinity Stones, I'm like, man, he's getting these kind of quick. And he gets like 4 and he's got 5. I'm like, bro, is he just like gonna, no way he grabs them all. And then Thor comes in, throw a store break. I'm like, oh here we go. Like they're gonna take him down, and he snaps it. I'm like, what?
Yeah, it was wild. Yeah. So we'll get to that. I think we're gonna rank the movies, but
yeah. No, that's a good point. All right, that's good. Next statement. You actually kind of alluded to this, so this is a great transition right here. Guardians of the Galaxy is the best MCU trilogy. Guardians of the Galaxy is the best. My bad. If you're on the podcast, that agree sign went up in like half a second. Like I didn't even finish the word trilogy before the agree sign popped up for David. He was ready. He already knew
All
what
right, all
this
right, all
answer
right, all
was.
right. You have no idea what's coming. Calm us down. Calm us down.
Oh, 3, 2, 1. I disagree.
Boom.
I
All right,
disagree. David
all right. Go for it.
obviously agrees. I mean, it's like 1A and 1B for me. Captain America, you talked about your favorite movie. Captain America, The Winter Soldier is my number one. And so that really has the Captain America trilogy up there for me. And then Civil War is like easily top 10. It's pushing top 5. And then I think the first Captain America is really good too. I
Yes,
think that is severely underrated. I think it's one of the best origin stories. And actually, I think we talked the other day. You have that in your top 10, right?
I
Yeah.
do.
So
I
yeah.
do
So
have
yeah.
my top
So
10.
so
So
um,
yeah,
so yeah. You
you're
agree that that movie's
blown
good.
away.
So that's why I have that as my number one trilogy. But man, Guardians is like it's right there.
There's not so man, I can't. Yeah, I mean, I think Captain America's great. I actually would say, if I were to choose one that's closest to Guardians, it's the Spider-Man trilogy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Spider-Man
You
trilogy,
can't go wrong
all
with
three of
either
those
of them.
movies are incredible. I mean, the truth is, Captain America trilogy is incredible too. So I don't know.
It's all preference. You just said
Oh,
you have an
perfect.
emotional connection to Spider-Man, so that makes perfect sense. See, I don't have quite the emotional connection to Spider-Man, so like I enjoy those movies, but they don't hit me quite as hard. And I just love the style of the Captain America movies too, like the Winter Soldier, like that spy espionage thriller type movie that
Yeah,
became.
yeah,
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 just
yeah.
so good.
Super cool. Yeah, I think the thing with Guardians is you get incredible world building that you
Yes,
don't get
you
with
do.
anything that's on planet Earth, obviously, because it's sci-fi.
Yeah,
And then you get probably I would not probably I would say it is the funniest,
yeah,
right? So
for
the
sure.
comedy there, I think the action's there. Like I think some people don't even think about the opening scene in Guardians 2 where they're fighting like the big tentacle thing
Yeah,
and like and the directing of it, like how where the camera angles that they shot, and just like how
watching
cool
Groot
that
dance
was,
the
like
entire time. Well,
yes, and like how they move through that. Honestly, I almost put that in like one of the best fight scenes, like which is hilarious because it's just so like I think
such a
gets
good
overlooked, but
opening.
it's so good.
It is. He,
So
he, here's a rate. This isn't part of the agree disagree, but if you had to rank the 3 openings of the Guardians movies, like the opening credit
yeah,
scenes
yeah,
where you have the songs, what would you rank them?
yeah.
So Guardians 2 had that scene that you just talked
Yeah,
about,
yeah.
Baby Groot dancing. Guardians
Well,
1
maybe
had
Guardians.
Quill on
Oh yeah,
Morag
yeah, him dancing on yeah,
dancing,
exactly.
and then Guardians 3 was Rocket dance or not dancing, but Rocket listening to Creep, the acoustic version of Creep by Radiohead.
So yeah, yeah, exactly. I
Much
would
more
say
emotional.
so good. I feel almost bad about saying Guardians 3 is number 3 for me because it was so good.
It's
But
number
it
3
was.
for me too.
Um uh but like again, it was just that you open up and you're already understanding like the gravity of where they're at and
Yeah.
what's happened and they're dealing with it. So I don't know.
And
It was still so good.
yeah, it was great.
But
It
I
perfectly
think
fit the tone of what the movie was going to be like. It was the best opening for that movie. That movie
yeah,
wouldn't have fit with like a goofy, funny opening like the other ones have.
yeah,
That was a
yeah,
great
yeah.
start. But yeah, you're right. It's third.
I think it goes 1, 2, 3 for me. Like it's probably in that order because number one was so
I
just fun and like introduce you. That is what Guardians is. It's like
yeah,
what one is kind of wrapped up in Guardians. Fun, makes you laugh. Again, in an awesome scene, like scenery. There feels like the dancing's like very like a lot of spontaneity to it.
yeah.
So
Which it was.
um
He actually he improvised all that. They didn't choreograph that dancing. James Gunn.
he's yeah, like
James Gunn
that's
told him
awesome.
like and gosh, Chris Pratt wanted it to be choreographed. He's like, dude, I don't think you understand how bad of a dancer I am. And James Gunn's like, no, dude, just go with it. And that's what he ended up coming up with.
Yeah, like when he grabbed the little rat thing to sing or whatever, to do it, like all that stuff. I'm like that's just so Guardians. It's so
Yeah,
fun.
it is.
Um, and I think the second one was like that too. I don't know.
The fir- the,
They're
the
very
first is
close.
just iconic,
Yeah.
so iconic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Just a thought there. Okay. Next one. Gamora and Quill should have ended up together at the end of Guardians 3. Gamora and Quill should have ended up together at the end of Guardians 3. 3, 2, 1. Disagree. Okay. All right. I don't know if we've talked about that before, but yeah, I think some people didn't like that decision, but I think it fit the story well because it's not the same Gamora, and it would have just felt weird to just pluck her from the reality that she's now grown up in just to appease the audience. And that's not what the Guardians is.
Yeah, the best. Well, one of the things that I think James Gunn does the best is continuity in a story. He makes sure that it feels like it was meant to be,
Yeah.
And nothing feels out of place.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And that would have felt out of place.
Would have felt so out of place. Would have felt so forced. Like we're just doing this for fan service, which I appreciate that he didn't just give fan service. Like he made it a really good, compelling story. And yeah, maybe there were some decisions people didn't agree with, and that's okay.
Well, and if you give that fan service up front, I think it's up front, people are like, that's great. And then as it kind of sits with them, they see it the second time or they chew on it, then I think people don't like it because it doesn't feel real. And so I think you give people real and they don't like it up first. Like it's bitter up front, but sweet going down.
No, that's such a good take though. Yeah, because real ages so much better. Fan service does not age near as well. Like, and you're seeing that with people and their reaction to No Way Home, which I still think, I don't know. I still think No Way Home's a great movie because I think it has one of the best third acts in any MCU film.
It's so good. I love that movie so much.
I'm whatever with the fan service because I do think it's still a really good film. But I mean, there are some people that are disliking it a little more because of that. But yeah, that's a great point. All right, last agree, disagree. Then we're getting heavy into the movie.
Okay.
Dave Bautista is the best wrestler turned actor. Dave Bautista is the best wrestler turned actor. 3, 2, 1. Agree, disagree. Okay, here we go. I said agree. David said disagree. Dave, I'll let you take this one first.
All right. I mean, to be honest, it's got to be The Rock. Come on. The Rock is he's the most successful for sure. And I think like when you say the best, I'm thinking of the one that I love every Rock movie. Like every movie The Rock's in.
Yeah, he is.
Like every movie Dwayne Johnson's in. As a personality, I think he's great. He does like have you ever seen The Rundown? Like that's
yes.
That movie is amazing for action, very different than a lot of the other movies that you know of, like nowadays, I guess, whatever. Jumanji is like
Jumanji,
hilarious.
Dude, the new Jumanjis, especially that first one, was one of the funniest movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, like it doesn't matter how, like there's a movie, Skyscraper, I think. I haven't watched it actually, but where I think he's like the main character in it. And I was like, yeah, I want to see it just because he's in it. He's an actor that I want to go see a movie just because he's in, because I know it's going to be a good time. It's either like there's something about it.
Great popcorn movies, like great, just like you're going to be entertained. You go watch his movies, you're going to be entertained and have a good time most of the time.
And he sings wonderfully.
He does have a fantastic voice, to be honest.
So I'm just saying, he really does. And Moana is one of the best animated movies of the last 10 years, and he's in that. So
that's true.
He's hit like
all valid points.
All the stuff on the head, all the nails on the head. So
it's a great argument. Yeah. From that aspect, you're not wrong at all. You're not wrong whatsoever. Definitely the most successful. So I said Batista because I think from an acting perspective, I think he's better than The Rock. I think he has a lot more range than The Rock. I think The Rock is kind of a one-trick pony when it comes to his acting, and he's not bad at that one trick, but he doesn't really like branch off from that. Batista has done quite a few different things now. He's done the Drax, but he's also been in like the Knives Out, what was it, Glass Onion, like completely different character in that. He's been in some scary movies and done those well. So I think his range is, I think he's really seeking out, and he's talked about this in interviews. He's really seeking to like actually become like he wants to be the best actor he can possibly be. I'm not saying The Rock doesn't, but like, I mean, The Rock, it's kind of like Adam Sandler, right? Like Adam Sandler knows what he does well, and
Yeah,
then he
yeah, yeah.
sticks with that because he knows it's going to make him money and it's successful, and you can't fault the man at all for that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna push back because I disagree. I think that in Knives Out, he Batista was a it was very similar. Like he kind of was that oaf of a character. Like he was kind of like, the same in Drax, he's also like, good at fighting, etc. But he, like where things kind of just go over his head, he can't take a joke. Like,
Yeah,
um, he's obviously more comic relief. He's a lot more comic relief in
in
Guardians than he
Guardians.
is
Yeah,
in Knives Out, but like he's kind of that meathead, and
yeah.
he's also that same meathead in like the Tooth Fairy. I haven't seen any of like the horror movies or scary movies or whatever that he's in,
He did the
but
M Night Shyamalan movie, which was a complete change up for him, and
I saw
was
the trailer for that,
yeah
and I think
a
if I had seen that,
knock at the door. I can't remember
yeah,
what
yeah,
it's
something
called.
like that, then I think that would have maybe changed my perspective. But it goes back to what I said about The Rock. I think like with the rundown, you get to see an action guy who's not there's no comedy at all. With Jumanji, you get to see it, and the other one he did with um who's that who's the other guy that he always does his movies with
Oh, Kevin Hart.
Kevin Hart. Thank you.
Yeah,
So with
they're a great pairing.
Yeah, he does the other comedy movies, so you get to see him in comedy. He did
Yeah,
animated and singing. I think he could. I mean, like I said, I think he has a great voice. I think he could get into more of that. Um,
yeah,
I think he could do like he did the Fast and the Furious like
yeah.
movie. So I think you're right. Like his range isn't huge, but I think it's wide enough where he's not like the same character.
I was just thinking about. I think it's in Fast Seven where the Rock's character has a cast on his arm and decides it's time for him to go to work, and he flexes his bicep and breaks the cast in half. And I'm just
Come
like,
on, how good! But
that's one of those moments where it's like the Fast and Furious has completely jumped shit. Like
yeah,
it's off the rails. That
yeah.
man just looked out at his arm, one flex, and the cast broke in half. Oh, it
Yep.
was fantastic.
That's fan service. You know what I mean?
I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. It'd be interesting to have that convo in let's say another 5-10 years, because The Rock has had a pretty good head start. So it'd be interesting to see if
Exactly.
Batista continues on a trajectory upward, or if he'll fall off. So
Yeah, I think that's my issue. Is I think Batista. Oh, he was also in Super Pets and Free Guy.
oh
I'm looking
yeah,
up
dude, he was good.
Jungle
Super
Cruise.
Pets was a great Jungle Cruise, underrated movie. That movie was fun.
Great movie. I agree. I'm now looking at Central Intelligence was the one I was thinking of.
Oh yeah, with that one was with Kevin Hart. Yeah,
Yeah, San
good
Andreas,
stuff.
and like yeah, I'm like looking through all of his stuff. He's in just yeah.
Man's got
Mummy.
man's got a filmography. He's been around for a while.
Yeah, he does. Tooth Fairy, so he does the one like Batista. Like
Yep.
yeah. So I think it will be I completely agree. If I were to give my opinion, and then I'll end it here, sorry, is the I think I would still have The Rock as my number one out of those two. But I think check back in 5 years and that might change.
It's good. It's a good take. All right, let's hop into it. We're talking Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. At this point, y'all already know there's spoilers, so I'm not going to say any more about it. So, gosh, instant reaction to the movie. Let's just talk pros and cons, just pros right off the bat. Things that you loved about the movie.
Incredible. It was just so good.
Amazing. Yeah, I was blown away.
Yeah. Like so we're talking about pros right now?
Yeah.
I'll let you go first and then I'll
Oh man, I mean, we've hit on so many of them. One of the things I love most about this movie, we talked about James Gunn and his ability to just emotionally tie you to his characters and moments in the film. That man, you want to talk about range. That man has range as a director in making sure that everything is hit in his movie. Like his movies are known for being funny, but we said they also have some of the heaviest emotional moments. So like, yeah, he's funny, but also you're going to cry. But also there's great action. Then there's great soundtrack. Like he knows how to mix music with the film well. And then the characters are good. There's everything. One thing I love so much about Guardians 3, though, that I appreciated to like the nth degree, because a lot of movies miss this mark, is I felt like every single character got their moment in this movie. Like every character got their like the attention they deserved with screen time and everything. I didn't walk away feeling like, man, like that was a great movie, but wish we would have gotten to see more of Rocket. Even though like Rocket was passed out for 3/4 of the
Yeah,
movie,
yeah,
but you
yeah.
still didn't feel like we didn't get to see enough of him because you got his backstory, and then he was in it pretty heavy at the end. Uh, I felt like every character got their well-deserved screen time and their great moments, which was that's hard to do when you have that many
Yeah.
characters.
And
Uh,
and how you go ahead.
no, that was pretty much it.
I was just gonna say how you can solidify like Mantis and Drax's relationship in like a movie and a half. Like
Yeah, yeah.
how much
Between the special, the holiday special, and this.
yeah, well, not even so. Take out the holiday special. Pretend that's not even part of this. If you just went off of Guardians 2 and 3 and Guardians 3, you have half a movie and a full movie, and like just those two. Because I haven't seen the special,
Oh,
so
really?
just yeah, yeah. So
It's a good
just
time.
those two are enough to make me feel like insanely attached to that
That
relationship.
relationship,
Like,
yeah,
the way that they play off each other, kind of like similar to like a brother and sister do. Like they play with kind of make
yeah.
fun of each other, but then also like have each other's back. So,
And then
man,
that tearful goodbye at the end when he's just
oh,
like when they're standing there, like you
brutal.
felt that.
Yeah, brutal, brutal. I loved how you saw things come to a close, like from start to finish. You got to see a lot of things come to a close. With like Drax dancing um,
Yeah, which
and
is
just
so good because he talks about how he doesn't dance in other movies. Like that's something he
in
doesn't
the
do.
very first one. Yeah.
And then for that to be the way it ends for him, like again, you talked about like the foreshadowing and just like all different things. And yeah, the fact that James Gunn still remembered that detail from the first movie and makes that the way that he finishes.
Yeah. And like just the like you had sent me it actually, but the I am Groot where you've
Oh,
been with the team long enough that you now understand the language of Groot.
oh,
That is such a minor thing that some people just wouldn't get. I didn't get it. And then
I
until
didn't
you said
either.
that. And then I'm like, that's brilliant though.
So
There's
genius.
and there's so many more I'm sure of that I'm not even picking up of like little things
Yeah.
that just made it feel so special and like I felt like I was part of the ship. I felt
Yep.
like this is my family.
Yeah. Like we've been a
Yeah,
member of the Guardians. For those that
exactly.
don't know what David was referring to, so in the movie, when Groot toward the end says, I love you guys, and they're all standing around, and he says that to him, and we hear those words come out of Groot's mouth. James Gunn said in an interview that to the Guardians in the movie, they didn't hear, I love you guys. Like it was, I am Groot. But for us as the audience, the reason we heard those words, like David said, is because we've been on the journey for so long with them that now, like, we're a part of the family. Like, and now we understand Groot the way that everybody else does. And which is funny because Gamora kind of alluded to that earlier in that movie, where she's like, "How, like, you guys all understand him? Like, are you just
Yeah.
making things up?" And then at
Yep.
the end, we hear him, and yeah, it was
Yeah, and she
such a
makes the
cool
comment
moment.
multiple times. And I did think it was weird as I was watching. Like it kind of seemed like it wasn't like it wasn't obtrusive to the story, but it did feel like almost not needed. But it was a thread. I didn't realize that's what made it so cool when I found that out because I was like, that was a thread line or through line that he
Yeah,
put the whole movie
yep,
to
that,
then at the end to maybe have some people realize it because there were going to be a lot of people who watched the movie and didn't even realize. So
yeah.
cool.
And I wondered too because as I'm sitting there in the theater when he said I love you guys, I looked immediately at the other characters and no character had a reaction. I'm like, okay, what just happened? Because none of them even like batted an eye that he just said this. So I thought in the moment like, man, maybe it's only interpreted for us, but then obviously we don't have the confirmation until James Gunn said it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so cool.
Any other pros? I mean, we could go on forever about the pros for this movie. It was just, I mean, villain. We'll talk about him. Incredible. We'll get into him in
Villain was
depth in a second.
incredible. I think we'll talk more about this movie as we rank it, probably, unless you want to dive through it first and then just put in our rankings. Well, I don't know how deep you want to go right
We'll
now,
do the
but
rankings toward the end. So, I mean, if you want to get a little deeper, feel free.
yeah, then let's do it because okay, so here's the biggest pro that I had. I said the pacing, I think was the
Yeah.
best of any Marvel movie,
Pacing was great.
which is crazy to me when you think of, like I can't think of one moment where it felt like it was off.
No.
From the beginning, like you have to think. So it starts off with the rocket. going
It's
through
getting
with
obliterated.
incredible opening, and then and then Adam Warlock, his entrance
That
felt
was a
like,
great entrance.
ooh, incredible entrance, bro. It was
So good.
amazing. It just felt like you were on your toes. You were like, okay, this is the end. Like they're dead. Like I thought
Right.
someone was dead already off the
Yeah, I
bat.
did. Yeah, I swore I was like, bro, someone's gonna bite it right here in the first 5 minutes of the film.
For real, that's the pressure that he put on the Guardians. And so you see that, and then it's, Rocket for his life. So even though you had moments that were funny or emotional moments, like that was I think the one of the amazing parts of the movie is Rocket's life was on the line pretty much the whole time. So
That
you
tone
always
was
felt
set
this
right at the beginning.
urgency. Exactly. You felt this urgency of like we have to save him the whole time,
Yeah.
you know. And because we all kind of knew it was the last one, we thought, is this Rocket's end?
Yeah, like,
Like,
is he gonna be the one to die?
yeah, is he gonna die? So I mean, the pacing was just so good. And what I'll say is you touched on it, and so we can talk about it a little bit, or you can talk. Let's give your thoughts. But the one of the things that Quantumania did poorly was Kang. They told you, they didn't show you. And I
Mm.
was telling another friend of mine, like, one of the best ways for you to tell a story and get somebody invested is in bite-sized pieces, how Guardians did it, where they flash back and they gave
Yeah.
you bite-sized pieces instead of starting off with, like, I think Eternals did that really poorly. Like they just told you a story and then expected you to be invested. Well, you're not
Yeah.
going to get invested from someone just telling you. You want to see it. You want to kind of take that in and have it was like marinated throughout the whole story, the
Yeah.
history of Rocket. So cool.
Yeah,
So cool.
and I remember we talked about that when we came out, how I loved that they broke Rocket's backstory up throughout the course of the movie rather than just like in one, 5 minute scene at the front of the movie. Because they could have done that, and most movies do. I feel like most of the
Yeah.
time that's the direction movies opt in for, is they just get the whole backstory out at the front end and then the rest of the movie goes on. But I love that we just kept coming back to it and you kept kind of being left with cliffhangers. And for the longest time, you're like, I don't see like what ends up happening. We know something terrible happens. Like, when's it going to happen? Because it just keeps seeming like his story is, I mean, it's like tragic, but it wasn't anything tremendously tragic yet. And all of a sudden you get the scene where he finds out they're not going back to they're not going to the new world, and it just escalates from there. And yeah, it was fantastically done. The storytelling, the pacing, you're absolutely right, was amazing. You didn't feel the 2.5 hour runtime whatsoever. I didn't anyway.
No way. I agree. Yeah, it was so good.
Uh,
Pacing was, I think, the best again of any Marvel movie. I think, and the other thing that goes, sorry, on that topic, one more thing, if you don't mind,
no.
is the fact that you don't have the problem with Endgame and Infinity War. Even though, like I said, Infinity War is number one for me. It is when you have that many characters, you're gonna have a harder time pacing it. It's
Yeah.
just more work to do.
You got to make cuts
It's
somewhere.
tough. Exactly. And so when you have a smaller gang of group, like a smaller gang or group
Yeah.
of people, it's so much easier to pace that. And so
Yep.
I thought that he's also lucky with, maybe not lucky, but it was probably optimal to choose that amount of people to work with.
I completely agree. And the other thing with it, which we've talked about it before, but all the humor hit. Every single bit of humor hit with that movie. I don't think there was any joke or anything that fell flat. It was all well timed. It never felt like it was forced or placed at the wrong spot, which James Gunn just does so well with that with his movies. None of them feel like they're over the top or forced. Just such a good balance. Honestly, cons, I got to be real. Dude, I was trying to think earlier, and I've been trying to think for a couple weeks. I can't think of any cons with this movie.
I got some.
Do you have some? Okay, I'm glad you got some, and maybe yours will trigger some of mine. Not that I want there to be bad things, but I'm like, man, I just can't think of anything that I really didn't like about the movie, and maybe my eyes need to be opened a little bit. So yeah, I would love to hear what you have on your list.
So I mean, again, it's similar where it's like I had to really think. I mean, there were things coming right out of the movie though that I think if I were to be my inner critic were to come out, which I think both of us are probably the type of people we should just preface to those listening that we are happy with any movie about any movie.
Yeah.
We can be critical, but
We watch
we
movies to enjoy them.
Yeah, we're not going to, talk a bunch of garbage about a movie.
Right.
But
I spent money. I'm not trying to sit there and pick the movie apart when I'm watching it. I want to enjoy myself.
Exactly. But we can still be critics. And
Right.
so I think my issue was the battle power of the High Evolutionary. He just felt in battle weak. As a bad guy, still incredible.
Yeah.
With everything that led up to it, but his actual battle power was much weaker than what I would have liked to see.
Interesting.
From somebody of that caliber.
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, we'll talk about him in a second. So, I'll wait to give that rebuttal. But yeah, that's an interesting con.
Yeah, and I'm interested to hear what you have to think because I
don't think that's a bad con, but it's funny because I think that's one of the things I liked, and I'll tell you why. But I don't think that's an invalid con. I think it's perfectly valid depending on your preference.
Yeah. And then the way Rocket's friends died, I thought was probably the most cheesy way of cheesy part of the whole movie. Which is kind of sad because it's like kind of the climax for Rocket's story.
Yeah.
And so what I had whispered over to Ashley, I don't know if you heard this or if I told you, but as soon as we saw the friends, like they came into the cage, and he made friends with like Teefs, Lila, and
Floor. Teefs, Lila, and Floor.
Teefs, Lila, and Floor. Teefs. As soon as he made friends with them, I whispered Ashley, they're all gonna be killed in front of him. That was my guess.
Yeah.
So my theory was that the High Evolutionary was going to make him watch or partake in execution.
Yeah.
And the truth is, I think they could have done it because with animals, you can get away with animal cruelty that you wouldn't have been able, that probably would have made it if it was a human rated R.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I think you did mention that after the fact, and I do agree with that. Or even if it was just like he saw it happen with Lila, and like the other two were killed off immediately, but then he saw that torture happen with Lila. I think that would have been and it's one of those things where it's like, okay, which line do we cross? Like if we cross that line, it probably really quickly goes from like, I mean, it's not super family friendly, but like we've completely jumped that ship as soon as you throw that in. So it's like, okay, do we want that? Or personally, I'm with you. Like I think that would have increased the emotional gravity of the film even more, but I could see why they maybe didn't opt to do that.
And I don't think you have to even show it, right? I think you just have to get you just have to have him, like, you can have screen, like you can do it. I mean it's giving me goosebumps to think about because I don't like it. Like it kind of feels yucky.
But it would have fit. It would have fit.
It would have fit. Whereas he accidentally shot them when he was trying to shoot Rocket. Like, that was like not Lila, but Teefs and Floor. Like that's the part where I said was cheesy. It was, hey, like that happens in a lot of movies. That's not an uncommon storyline.
Kind of a classic trope. Yeah.
Classic trope. Exactly. Yeah. A little archaic.
Yeah. That's fair. No.
But that was my only.
I see that.
It's not bad. It's not bad. It's just not. I think that was that shows you how good the movie is if that's the con,
Right.
So.
Okay, so let's transition then into the High Evolutionary since we're already kind of talking about them.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I love, and this is going right into what your con was, but I actually loved that they just beat the absolute crap out of the High Evolutionary at the end of this film. Like, and I can't remember another villain in any Marvel movie where like the villain just gets annihilated within seconds like he did in the Guardians movies. And I think most of the time I would have been upset, but like I kind of think that like James Gunn knew how despicable of a villain he had created and like how much you'd hate this guy by the end. And so to see the Guardians just come in and like the way they shot that scene too was super cool to watch them all just like combo punch this dude, like Drax hit him and then he like flies into Quill who shoots him, who gets into like Gamora who slashes him. and he's just getting tossed around like a salad. And
So cool.
yeah, I don't know. I can see it go both ways because it's like, yeah, they didn't feel the threat of him in that moment. They just beat the living crap out of him, but I also
Yeah.
kind of liked it. And they had a really cool fight right before it. If they didn't have the hallway fight before that, I'd be like,
Yeah.
okay, where is my big villain moment? But
Yeah. 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 I
uh
think that's fine. I think that's valid. I
yeah.
My pushback on that is well, let me say this actually. I think what you're saying is really good. And I think the like it kind of makes sense too, right? From a perspective of, hey, you have this guy who's very intellectual, but more than likely he's not going to have all. You can't have every. Usually, you don't have everything, right? So you're
Yeah.
really intellectual, but you're not going to have an incredible like battle power.
Yeah.
Um.
Yeah, like there's gonna be a weakness somewhere.
So, but here's the issue: he has been running. He has to, in my mind, he has to have a pretty high battle power. Otherwise, other people would have addressed and kind of how do I say, step to him earlier.
Yeah.
You know, like if he didn't create that fear, like I get why Rocket wouldn't, right? Because
Yeah.
there's probably trauma there. But like other people um would have, like Adam Warlock, for example, like these kind of people that he's either created or even who's the, why am I blanking on who's the, like the galactic, like in the first movie they're like the
Oh,
uh
Xandar Nova.
Xandar. Yep,
Nova
Nova
Core.
Corps. So if Nova Corps, like they, with their power, they should have been able to beat him. You know what I mean? And he's
Yeah.
doing illegal things, and they all know it. Like people are know it. You know.
Yeah.
So that's my maybe pushback, but I agree. I don't think
Yeah.
you're wrong.
I
So
I kind of like it from the sense of, at least in my mind, everybody thought he was so smart and so intelligent, and like, yeah, to a degree he was, but I think the end showed us like that he wasn't as smart as he thought he was, and
yeah,
it finally caught up to him. And you saw little bits and pieces of that throughout the movie because he couldn't figure out the perfect formula for this
yeah,
perfect world. And it wasn't even him that thought of, like, was able to create the perfect beings. It was Rocket.
yeah,
And
yeah,
he couldn't figure out how Rocket figured it out, and he couldn't. And then that gets figured out, and you think, oh, he's got the perfect world, only for the Guardians to show up to counter Earth and realize that this place is just as corrupt as regular Earth. Like, you have people
yeah,
dealing drugs and beating each other up. So, like, again, there is another sign of, oh, you're not as smart as you thought you were. And then at the end, like, everyone thinks he has this massive power and ability to control gravity. And the Guardians, like Rocket has the boot, they all have the boots, like the
yeah.
anti-gravity boots. And
Yep.
High Evolutionary thinks he has them right where he wants them, and Rocket hits the switch, drops down. It's like, oh yeah, that's not going to work as well as you thought
Yeah.
it was. You're not as smart as you thought. And then they just beat the crap out of him because at that point he's like, I have nothing else. That was my power. And I don't know. So
100%.
in that sense, I like the thematics of how that theme tracked of, like, everyone else builds this guy up to be this just genius, untouchable, and the Guardians started to see, like, no, this guy is just like,
He's normal.
yeah, yeah,
He's just a smart dude.
yeah,
Yeah,
really smart.
I like that. I think I'll give you that. I agree. I agree with that.
The other thing I really loved about the High Evolutionary, and we'll talk about where we rank him as a villain here in a second, but what I loved is that it was a breath of fresh air that we had a villain who wasn't sympathetic in any way. Like,
Yeah.
which I love the sympathetic villains. My favorite villains in the MCU are sympathetic villains.
Yeah.
But I love that this was a villain who had no redeeming qualities whatsoever. This guy sucked.
Yeah.
And you hated everything about him, and that made him such a good villain because, like, his motivations were still very good. Like for him, his motivations were good, and so it wasn't just like evil for the sake of being evil. Like, he still had motivations. They weren't sympathetic motivations, but they were motivations
Mhm.
beyond just like world power. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Agreed.
and I thought that was done really well. And you need villains like that, in my opinion. I think you need to have a good mix of both. You need to have the Emperor Palpatines, who are just like pure evil, and you
Yeah.
need to have the Killmongers, who, are just
Darth
kind of
Vader.
misguided. Yeah. Right.
If you're talking about Star Wars, right? Like you have
Yep.
Palpatine and Darth Vader. You
Yeah.
have, for sure. I agree.
Exactly.
I 100% agree with that. Um, I think that sometimes we want villains to be so relatable, And some of the best villains like should not be,
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, like Green Goblin, another one in the MCU, like not really any redeemable qualities. Um,
sure.
um, Norman Osborn has some redeemable qualities, but the Goblin himself has none. Like he just exists to be the biggest pain in Spider-Man's butt
Yeah.
and wreak havoc. But it's great. It is
Yeah.
fantastic cinema watching him do what he does. Uh,
Yep.
where do you rank High Evolutionary as a villain in the MCU? I see people ranking him everywhere. I think I have a pretty good idea of where I have him, but I'm curious to know because I think this is one thing we haven't actually talked about.
Never talked about this. I actually, it was so funny. I made my list on Friday before we even talked, or Thursday before we even knew before I even knew I was going to be on the podcast. I was just like, I wonder. I was thinking about this movie, and I was thinking just about the bad guys in
Yeah.
Marvel, and I have an opinion, which could be agree disagree. Might as well here. Let's agree disagree.
Yes, let's go.
Marvel has how do I format this agree disagree? Let me say Marvel villains are overall lacking. Agree disagree.
Overall lacking. Oh, overall. I'm gonna. Yeah, I mean, I see both
I'm
sides to
throwing it.
this. So the,
So I
I said disagree. David says agree.
Oh, good job. Yeah. So you want me to run down kind of my bad guys really quick, and then High Evolutionary will be in there, or do you want to just talk about High Evolutionary in that list? What do you think?
Just talk about high evolutionary and where you have him in your list,
Okay.
essentially.
So I went through, and I have him as an excellent. So I have tiers.
Okay,
Excellent.
you tiered him. Gotcha.
Yeah, and so he's excellent, and in order he would be fourth.
Oh, okay, okay, nice. Yeah,
So he's pretty high up there.
he is high up there. I see what you're saying about like, I mean, yeah, if you took all the movies, all the Marvel movies, and every villain, like, yeah, you have more just okay villains than you have elite. So
Yeah,
I get what you're saying from that sense.
exactly what I
The
was
reason
thinking.
I said disagree, and this is all perspective based, is because in my mind, the elite ones are so elite. Like Marvel has created some of the best villains in cinema, not just in superhero movies. Like Thanos is one of the best villains ever.
Yes, I
Um,
actually have Thanos as the best movie villain of all time.
yeah, Thanos
For
is one of
me,
the best ever. And
I don't watch like horror movies or anything like that because I think people would disagree when you get to that stage. But Thanos is got to be the best villain of all time.
yeah, I mean he's on that Mount Rushmore. I mean you got like him, Vader, Joker. I mean yeah, those guys are all right up there. So yeah, you got people like Thanos. Loki is a great villain. I mean he's not
I
on.
don't have Loki actually on as a good villain.
He's
So
not really. See, he's not in my. I don't think he's on my Mount Rushmore, but I still think he's one of the better ones. But he's definitely not my Mount Rushmore. I think my Mount Rushmore is Thanos, Killmonger. Um, gosh, High Evolutionary's up there probably. I don't know who my other one would be. I know I'm probably forgetting one. Namor's up there, but you know my love and obsession with Wakanda Forever, and I love a good sympathetic villain. So Namor.
so he would be on my good, but he's not on my excellent. So excellent goes in this order: Thanos is number one, Killmonger, Kang, High Evolutionary, Winter Soldier, and Mysterio.
Winter Soldier is a that's a sleeper pick that I think people forget about since he's good now, and
Yes.
I think people forget how much of an absolute problem he was when he was a villain.
100%. I think he
An
is
absolute
absolutely,
problem.
and that's where I'm going to talk about the Loki thing. Is Loki as a villain was okay. The thing about Loki was he was always somebody that you thought was going to be good just by the way that he's mischievous in
Yeah,
his name. Like
you always thought the turn was
you
coming.
never thought he was really going to be a bad guy. And so that for me, I would put him in the okay category because I even then like there are other villains that I think were good villains.
Yeah,
But and so yeah, that's why I don't have Loki up there, but excellent in that order.
his villainous arc in the Avengers is what gets me because I think in the Avengers he was a very hateable villain Like he was just kind of doing evil for evil's sake, but he was so conniving and just like so snarky. You just hated him. And when the
Yeah,
Hulk grabbed him, kind of similar to how it happened with the High Evolutionary, when the Hulk grabs him at the end and just starts smacking him around, that was such a satisfying thing to watch after
yeah,
all the crap he had stirred up. Another slept on villain is Zemo from Civil War,
yeah, yeah. Well,
a
he
guy
almost
who didn't even fight but managed to tear the Avengers apart just because he was so devious and intelligent about how he did it.
100%. I almost had him on my list of excellent, but I have him as good.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll have to tier list. I need to do that. That gives me a good idea of something to do.
yeah, I think Thanos best bad guy, Killmonger second best, Kang. I think what I saw in Loki is why I put him
Yeah,
third.
Kang and
What he
Loki
can
is
be,
Kang and Quantumania was good, but High Evolutionary is what we wanted Kang to be. Like
yes,
we wanted Kang to be what High Evolutionary ended up being. Now, Kang is going to be the bigger problem because it's Kang, and so I have no doubt that when it's all said and done, Kang will
but
be
like yeah.
near the top of the list.
Even seeing Kang in Loki, I was like, man, this guy just feels so. One of the things that I rated my people on were power, right? That they had to have heavy strength, and they had to feel like why Mysterio made this list is the same reason why Kang does. It feels like his web is all around you, and you never can, and you can't escape
Yeah,
it. It feels suffocating to you.
yeah,
Thanos was the same way. Killmonger wasn't, but Killmonger had the similar thing Thanos does, which is you he almost gets you on his side, right?
yeah,
Like that's
yeah.
how good of a bad guy he is, which is why I have him up there.
Also, the
Um,
fact that he was right, like for the most part, especially when you see Wakanda Forever, like everything Killmonger wanted to do ended up being what Wakanda ended up doing. Like he was right in almost everything he did. He just went about it the wrong way. But like,
yeah,
and he even alludes to that when he sees Shuri in the throne room in her ancestral plane, and he just makes multiple mentions of like I was willing to do what none of the other kings were able to do, and look where we are now. Like your dad would have killed Riri Williams because that's the way it was before I showed up and righted the ship. And it's like, yeah, he's not wrong.
yeah.
And yeah, you're right. That's part of what makes him such a good villain.
So
Yeah, I think High Evolutionary is definitely top 5. He might be around top 3 for me. And again, just I hope he comes back. James Gunn has confirmed that he's not dead, that he was carried off the ship, and which would make sense in the comics. He shows up in a lot of ways, so it'd
yeah,
be cool to get him back because that his actor is phenomenal. So I'd love to see more of him.
100% phenomenal. One thing I want to talk about the High Evolutionary before we jump off, because I don't know if we'll
Yeah.
come back. There was a scene. So like the scene literally gives me chills, and the best scene. Actually, what are your thoughts? I don't know if you have a thought on this. If you were to say the best scene of the High Evolutionary in the whole movie,
Oh gosh, dude. Oh
which
man.
I have one that I thought about
If you
ahead of
have
time.
one, go for it, and it might trigger for me because I'm trying to run it through because there were so many good ones.
The High Evolutionary when Rocket's screaming after Lila dies, and the High Evolutionary screaming back to
Oh
him,
yeah,
like like that honestly made me almost sick to my stomach. Like
dude,
he
he
was
felt
taunting him with
so
his own
unhinged.
scream. Yeah, like he was taunting him, but with his own scream. I was like, what? Like, oh,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
where you hit. That's where you hated. Like that's where you. Oh yeah, no, that's such a good point. He felt
It's like,
so unhinged in that moment.
yes, like I wanted to scratch his face off.
And toward the end when everybody on his ship is telling him like we need to abandon this, and he just doesn't care, and he kills everyone because he's just like, no, I don't care that all of you are actually right and this is ridiculous. At this point, throwing out all logic and I'm going after him. And I like that they address that too, because it's like, yeah, that could have been almost a plot hole of like, dude, it made no sense for you to go after Rocket at this point. Like it was just dumb and
Yeah,
unwarranted. And they literally call him out for that, and he's like, don't care, like this is what I want to do, and I don't care if it literally destroys everything else.
yeah,
And I like that about him. That was good.
yeah. I agree.
Oh, okay. Real quick, we'll touch on this briefly, just for time's sake. But Adam Warlock, we mentioned this was his introduction. I loved his first scene. The way that, first of all, the image of him just like casually flying through space to the tune of "Crazy on You" by Heart, just such a dope entrance. And then he just comes in and obliterates the Guardians. But curious to hear your thoughts on this character because there's a lot of divide, Some people love him, some people hate him. The people that hate him seem to be the people that are very familiar with the comics, which there's definitely been a deviation. The people that love him are the ones that just don't have a knowledge of the comics or just don't care. I know the comics. Honestly, I don't care. I think it's a really creative take on him, and I like the fact that we get to see him as a child because we know that's not the way he's always going to be. He's going to mature, and I think that'll be cool. Like we'll probably see him quite a bit more mature the next time he shows up, which I think will be neat because we'll be able to compare and contrast. I like that aspect of it. I don't know.
And even the way that he Will Poulter or whatever,
Yeah.
that he was the way that he acted was very like, I mean, goes back to kind of Chronicles of Narnia, like Eustace, like very much like childlike,
Yeah.
I don't know any better. I'm kind of just like I'm a little kid, and
Just
they
doing what I'm
reference
told.
the movie, like yeah, I'm just like he has no idea what's right and wrong, and he really doesn't really know why he's
Yeah.
doing the bidding of the High Evolutionary without understanding the consequences of it. They
Yeah.
haven't hit yet. So I think it's cool. I think going I know a little bit of the comics. I don't know a ton of it, but I know that he's quite a bit different. But here's my take on the comic part, because I'm sure a lot of people, there's a lot of hate on that because of the difference with the comics. But you know who Brandon Sanderson is?
Yeah. Yeah. Author.
Author, one of probably of our time, maybe the best fantasy writer. He has I think there are going to be adaptations of his books here soon
Into movies. Yeah.
about kind of looking for that and what they want slash need to do. And something he had said, which I thought was really interesting and maybe profound, was that different mediums have need a different response and need to tell a different type of story. Can't all tell the same story. And what he was saying is, hey, my books, I don't expect them to be exactly like, there will be differences. People will not like in whatever we make, movie,
Yeah.
whatever, or if it's a TV show. And a TV show is going to be different than what you can do in TV shows, was different than what you need to do in a movie.
Right.
And it's all different than what you can do in a book and need to do in a book. And so some of those things, you're going to lose things and you're going to add things because that's how you make a quality product.
Yeah.
And I actually agree with everything he says. And I think this is an example of that, where how do you add him into the Marvel universe at his actual power level? Like,
right.
And with all the context that you've already created, you're not starting from scratch. You have a framework you have to build him into.
Yeah.
So how do you do that properly? I think they did it in an amazing way.
I think, yeah, it seamlessly transitioned from how he was introduced at the end of Guardians 2 in the end credit scene. And we know that he was being built by the Sovereign. And then we find out that the Sovereign are actually a creation of the High Evolutionary tied into this movie. And we find out he's doing the High Evolutionary's bidding, which is like that is a comic thing. Like the High Evolutionary and Adam Warlock are together in the comics to a degree. So that stuck. And yeah, I thought you said it perfectly. How do we adapt him into the MCU at his current power level without like making him just so overpowered right away? And we make him a child. Like we let him start out as a child. That's how. Otherwise, the movie would have been over in 5 minutes. He would have killed everyone.
It would have killed all of the Guardians.
It'd have been over. You could have never adapted Adam Warlock from the comics right into the MCU. Maybe as it goes on and you have other people that can counter him, but right now, no. So I think that's a perfect point. And he was hilarious. Like, he was one of the funniest parts of the movie.
So funny. And you have a thing called like power creep, right? That's a big thing.
Yeah.
So you have that in the comics. You have years of power creep.
Yeah.
That you're trying to now figure out how to readjust those power levels in a different medium.
Yeah.
And I think they did great. So.
That's a great point. All right. Really quick, just quick thoughts on this. The soundtrack for this movie, they never miss. Where do you rank this one among the other two Guardians films? If you had to rank 3, 2, 1 for the Guardians soundtracks, which one is number 1? What's 2? What's 3?
Pretty boring here. 1, 2, 3 for me in that order.
It's a pretty. I definitely think 2 is last for me. it's between 1 and 3 for number one, and I need to see 3 again to really probably accurately assess. I could see 3 having much more of an emotional attachment as time goes on. Like Dog Days Are Over, that song will forever like hit me in the feels because I'll just relive that final scene and see like Drax and Mantis saying goodbye to each other and all the Groot and all Rocket dancing. No Sleep Till Brooklyn. I'm only ever gonna think of that fight scene. Creep was a great introduction. I mean, yeah, there were a lot of good songs, but then Guardians 1 just had so many. Hooked on a Feeling, Come and Get Your Love, Ain't No Mountain High Enough. Like, gosh.
It's the best. It's the best. To me, it's the best soundtrack, Guardians 1. Here's my take on the reason why Guardians 3 didn't hit. I thought it was a great soundtrack. I really enjoyed it. But it's just old enough. So, like, I know some of the songs that were in Guardians 1 and Guardians 2 when they played.
Yeah.
They're old enough that they're getting played again. Like the cycle of songs is like people go back to them that you've heard them before Guardians.
They're classics.
They're classics.
Yeah.
Where Guardians 3, I'm young enough where those songs I didn't know majority of the songs besides probably the Dog Days. Like I might have heard them.
They're all newer songs, like newer in the context compared to the other songs.
Exactly, and they haven't hit the classic like.
No.
So for me, they didn't hit the same way the other.
No, that's a completely fair take. Yeah, because I mean those songs were from like the 2000s playlist that he found on the Zune or whatever. So
I think it was
that makes perfect sense. Yeah, maybe it's 90s.
90s, and then it switches to 2000s at the end, which will be fun. That will be if we get something, we'll see. So
yeah, that'd be cool. All right, big questions. Last things that we're finishing with here. Top 5 fights in the MCU. Top 5 MCU films. So the reason we're talking fights, and maybe this won't even make it, but in this movie, there is, in my opinion, one of the greatest fights in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Just in one of the most creatively shot. The hallway fight at the very end with like one continuous shot, just incredible. One of the most creative fights I've ever seen in a movie. And so that sparked the thought of, okay, well, how would we rate our top 5 fights in the MCU period? So
this is so tough, bro.
Dude, bro, this I was trying to do this earlier today. This was the hardest ranking I've had to do with anything. It's way easier for me to rank my movies or villains or anything. This was hard. So we'll go. Yeah, we'll just alternate. We'll each give our number 5, our number 4, and number 3. So we'll just do it that way. So I do want to say my honorable mention at my number 6, I have Cap versus Tony in Civil War. And it pains me to not even put that on my top 5 because that's maybe the most emotional fight out of any of them in the MCU.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my number 6. So my number 5 is.
Let me throw a little caveat out there.
Oh yeah.
So for me, I don't know if you went through and watched any. I didn't have time to watch any. So
I did watch them.
And best Marvel movies, which I'll probably reiterate this when we get to that list. But I don't. I'm going off memory, which I think is actually kind of valuable because it means these are the ones that stuck out to me the most.
Yeah, it's the first impression.
So and it also is the longest lasting. So we'll see.
I think that's a valuable way to look at it too. Yeah, what jumped out? What jumped off the page or off the screen at you the first time you saw it and just stuck? Yep. I think there's a lot of value in ranking things that way.
So I could be way off. People are going to be like laughing at my list, but that's the reason behind. These.
No, I mean, and to your point, there's so many good fights in the MCU. Like it's tough to rank a definitive 5.
Yeah, like my honorable mention, if we're going to say is the fight scene in the beginning of Guardians 2. I thought that was so good and just fun.
Yeah, and the way you rank fight scenes could be completely different. Like, are we ranking based on choreography? Are we ranking based on visual? Are we ranking based on like you said, just like the camera angles and like how it was done?
Yeah.
You could do it a million different ways. So, number 5. My number 5 is the elevator fight from Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
I forgot about that, honestly.
Yeah.
So
the fact that you're able to take a square footage area that small and still have such a well choreographed and like intense fight that was just so well shot. And then you immediately leave that and he jumps out of the elevator, like takes down
Yeah.
the airship, and just such a crazy sequence.
Yeah, you're right. That is such a good fight. I forgot about it. Still wouldn't make mine though, but my fifth is Thor versus Hulk in Thor Ragnarok.
See, I forgot about that one, and that's a good one.
That one to me is like you have probably the two strongest Avengers
Yeah,
fighting. I think that would probably be from the comics. I would think even
yeah,
Thor and Hulk are the two strongest Avengers. Um, and you get to actually see them like battle and
like really
to
fight it
epic
out.
proportions and like yeah I remember and it's just two people too, so that was the other thing that was awesome about it. It wasn't like this big ornate all these different people coming
Right.
in. It was two people in an arena fighting.
Yep.
It felt like you were watching a Coliseum fight with
Yeah, it's
two
Gladiator.
cosmos,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, that's
sweet.
good. I forgot about that one. Number four. My number four is Shang-Chi versus Wenwu at the end of Shang-Chi when they're fighting
Oh,
and they
okay.
have the rings. So
Yeah.
I went back and forth about which Shang-Chi fight do I put, because that movie has three of the best fights in the MCU, and I'm like, okay, I can't put all three of them on here. I need to just pick one and put it on here. So it's either the bus fight, which is insanely well choreographed, the fight with Shang-Chi and the Death Dealer, which might be the best choreographed fight in all of Marvel. But it's really short. It's like a 30-second fight and it's over, which is why I didn't put it on the list. And then Shang-Chi versus the Mandarin, his dad, Wenwu, I thought was the perfect combination of everything. It had great choreography, but also the CGI and just the cinematography of like the way they use the colors of the rings and the creative ways that they use the rings to fight. I just thought it was a really good fight.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was cool. I do have a Shang-Chi fight, but mine is not it. We'll get to that.
Okay.
My fourth is Civil War airport fight scene.
Classic.
And I think I wouldn't normally, I don't think this was like the best. This is the one that I have the most people in, which tends to, I realized when I was kind of ranking my fight scenes, I tend to not like those fight scenes. I just don't think you can do.
It's hard to choreograph those really well.
Exactly. And make you feel like you're invested to each fight. Like how you do that, it feels more like fan service in most of those fights, which it still did in this, but there were good moments with like Hawkeye and Natasha. Like there were little like because of the Civil War and you had like different factions almost fighting against. That was really cool. But the reason why this ended was because I remember watching this and being blown away because this is the first time you see the new Spider-Man on screen.
Yeah.
And the way that they did him and like his interactions and the way that he talked, like everything, it blew me away.
It was classic Spider-Man.
Classic Spider-Man. And he was awesome. And Tom Holland killed it. And I thought that was, I don't think most people remember that, but that was the first time you see Spider-Man before any of the movies.
Yeah.
I thought that was so good.
Yeah.
So good.
I can't even argue with that. That's a great one. My number three is Guardians 3, the hallway fight from Guardians 3. So that makes my top three in the list. So And again,
give me your full top three, because I think we're going to have some that overlap. That's why I want to.
Okay. So you want me to get my three, my two, my one?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So number three is the Guardians 3 fight, which I will say that very well could change when I see it the second time. Especially knowing me, I love stuff a lot more the second time I watch it. I could easily see myself putting that at number 2 or 1 once I see it again. So that's a caveat. Same thing with my movie rankings when that comes up. That fight is my number 3. I do think it's the most creatively shot, though. The highway fight from Winter Soldier is my number 2. Cap versus Bucky on the highway. I think that is in contention for the best choreographed fight, and it's long. Like that's like a 5-minute fight of them just like going at it, and it's so well done. And yeah, you alluded to how good the Winter Soldier is as a villain. And then my number 1 is the battle on Titan from Infinity War, because for so many reasons. I think, one, it's super creative. Obviously, the stakes are huge. I also think visually it is the coolest, especially when it ends up being Doctor Strange versus Thanos. I think the way that their powers like go back and forth just looks so cool visually. So, those are my top three: Battle on Titan, Highway fight, Guardians 3 fight.
Okay, we have two of them the same, and one of
Nice.
them's different. So mine go Shang-Chi bus fight.
Yeah, dude.
I think when you talk about choreograph, that's my
Pre-
best choreograph. So I grew up watching Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan movies with my dad. So like to see one of those in like a Marvel movie, like it was so.
Dude, when he does the move, I don't even know what he does. He does something with his jacket, like takes his arm out of his jacket, hits the one guy, puts his arms back in, hits the other dude. Like,
So
whoa.
cool. It was so cool. Yeah, and I think that I think they really killed it on that fight.
Yeah. Gosh.
It was an amazing fight, and especially because it was the first time you really saw him, and you felt like, okay, I'm watching a kung fu movie. It
You
felt
literally.
like, yeah, it was amazing. So that's why I have it as 3.
So
And
good.
what was so cool about it is it didn't feel like all these other fights I have on here are all fantasy. That
Right.
fight is the only fight that could happen in real life. Like it feels like, hey, I could be on the bus and that could happen.
Yeah. Except for the
That's-
guy that had the machete for the arm.
Exactly. Yeah. But the actual fight.
Yeah, the fight itself. Yeah.
Because like Thor versus going through these Thor versus Hulk, there's kind of some magic, like
Oh yeah,
obviously
for sure.
abilities. Titan, like a Civil War, everyone has abilities. Then Shang-Chi, then Thanos on Titan. I'm just gonna say everything you said and more. Like it was incredible.
Yeah.
It was my number one fight scene just for the epic proportions of it. Like, everything in that movie was incredible. So
And the fact that fight scene did have quite a few people in it, but it was just done so well. Although it was a bunch of people versus one guy, which I think is what made it work. It wasn't
100.
it wasn't 5 people versus 5 people. It was like 6 people versus 1.
Yes, 100%. I agree with you entirely on that. And then Guardians 3 is actually number 1 for me.
Nice.
I think it's one of the best fight scenes I've ever seen. So what
It's
here's what I'll say
incredible.
about it. You get to see every single person. So it's one continuous shot, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I only saw it once, but it's one continuous shot. It's quite graphic, but you also get to see everybody fight in a different way. Not everyone's fighting the same style. They all fight in their own way. Like
Right.
Rick using his tree limbs, and everybody gets you see Rocket like running on people. Like,
Yep.
it's so dope. It's just
It's
so cool.
great.
The way that they use like normal, like the way that they use slow down part, like
Yep.
some parts were slowed down and some parts were normal speed, and like how just the whole directing of the fight felt just so
Chef's kiss.
smooth. And the fact that it was in a hallway, it felt like you were just moving through the
Yeah.
hallway, and you fought, and like the camera just, it was like a wave of fighting as
Yeah.
you went through the hallway, right? It was so dope. And what I'll say is what it made me think of is, we never talked about this, but as soon as I saw it, I thought of, have you ever seen Kingsman?
We did talk about this. Yeah, because it
Okay.
definitely mirrors the fight from Kingsman.
The fight from Kingsman in the church or whatever, is
A lot of similarities there.
I wonder how much he saw, like he references that, like, or he thought about that when he was directing this fight, because that's what it made me think
A
of.
lot of similarities. Oh, so
So
good.
cool.
Also, what is it about hallway fights? I know you've seen some of Daredevil, but Daredevil is known for like the incredible hallway fight scenes. Like, what is it about really good fights and being in hallways?
Because you can't escape. You
No.
gotta fight, or
Yeah. And a lot of them end up being continuous shots too, because Daredevil is known for that too, having like continuous shot scenes with some of the fight scenes. And again, hallways. It's just, so perfectly well done.
Love it.
All right, yeah, man, those are good lists right there. All right, we're running pretty long on time here, but let's finish it up with our top 5 MCU films. We won't give a whole lot of explanation into these. We'll keep them pretty brief, but I mean, most people, and I know both of us included, like this movie has altered everybody's top 10s and top 5s because it's just that dang good. So it's worth revisiting what our top 5s are. So again, we'll do this the same way. We'll go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So again, I have to preface this with, this will probably change when I see this a second time. Don't call me blasphemous. When I see this a second time, I'll probably have a different opinion, and it's probably going to be ranked higher than what I have it now. My number 5 is Guardians 3. So Guardians 3 is in my top 5. It kicked Iron Man out. Iron Man is at number 6 for me. Yeah, I loved it. And if I'm being completely honest, I fully expect when I see it again, it's probably going to bump up to either 4 or even 3. I could see it being top 3 for me. I don't think it's ever getting past top 3. I think my 1 and 2 are really firmly set in stone. Like, yeah. When I see a movie that's going to get the number 1 or 2 ranking, I'm going to know it. Like, I'll know right in that moment. Like, yep, that's my favorite. That was it. That unseated it. So that's number 5 for me.
That's great. Yeah, so you said Iron Man gets knocked out. I have Iron Man as number 5. Iron Man 1
Can't even
is
argue with
number
that.
5, which because Guardians 3 slots into my top 5, which we'll get to, that means that Iron Man 5 goes to 5th spot and Endgame gets pushed out of my top 5.
Okay. See, I need to watch Endgame again because it's in my top 5. I need to watch it again and see if it's still in there because I know as time's gone on, people have kind of moved that a little bit down. Yeah, going to be interesting to see. I need to give a rewatch to all these.
But the thing that Endgame did really well, best part about the movie to me was the gravity of people coming back. But you
Yes.
don't actually see that as much in Endgame as you do in sequel movies and shows afterwards. So anyway,
Right. No, yeah, that's the thing. Like, yeah, Endgame just has the emotional impact, and that's gonna be hard to move it out. Okay, my number 4. You already know this one, but my number 4 is my hot take in my top 5, the one that most people would push back on, and my number 4 is Wakanda Forever. I loved it, and you like the first Black Panther more. I like Wakanda Forever more. I think the storytelling is just insane. I think it's the best storytelling in the MCU. I think it has some of the best character development in the MCU and one of the better villains. And I thought for a movie that would have had every right to suck because they lost their main character, not only did they make it great, but I personally, again, I think it's better than the first in a decent amount of ways. So I won't go into all those now because that's a different podcast. But yeah, that's my hot take at number 4 is Wakanda Forever.
Yeah, I have Black Panther at 4.
Okay, I respect that. Black Panther is my number 7.
The original Black Panther, I think, is the best. The better of the two. Wakanda Forever didn't hit for me. I didn't really like it. Honestly, it would be on the low, which I know we were very different on this because I know, and that's okay. But I have it on my lower half of movies for the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
But the original Black Panther, I think casting of Chadwick Boseman was
perfect,
incredible. Like the casting of Killmonger, incredible.
Yeah.
Like what you got from just the casting itself elevated it to such a high level. Then you add on top of that, adding in Vibranium, the culture of like African culture was so unique because for the most part, Marvel hadn't done that. And then you see the Shang, right? And then on top of that, one of the best soundtracks, like the way that like it was just overall, I think
so good.
I don't think people forget because you lack the novelty of seeing all these things first, and now you know them, and so they're kind of just they're there. But that's why I have it up there so high.
Yeah, no, that's great. My number 3 is Endgame, so not much more to say about it other than it does like the first half of the movie lacks. The second half of the movie is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, climax in all of Marvel. So it's just tough to beat that.
Yeah. I have Spider-Man No Way Home. I think I told you Far From Home, but I'm switched those around. I didn't mean to say that.
I kind of assumed you meant No Way Home.
No Way Home. Because and for me, it's just the nostalgia. I think Andrew Garfield's is my favorite Spider-Man.
Yeah, same.
And so, yeah, just the nostalgia of seeing kind of everyone back together, and also like when he like just when
everything. He saved MJ. Yeah,
when he saved MJ, like when they talk, like kind of when they like coordinate together, when whoever the original Spider-Man stops Tom Holland from
killing Green Goblin,
all of that stuff. Like there's just so much that like tugs at your heartstrings, and it's so good. And it will be for me.
Yeah, so. No, that's great. My number 2 is Infinity War. Is what your number 1 is. So I'm pretty sure I know what your number two is. Infinity War to me is the most rewatchable movie in the MCU. Like that's a movie I could put on, watch the whole thing, and I could literally start watching it right after I finish it and still just be as entertained as I was the first time I watched it.
Yep.
I love it.
It's too good. I mean, I could talk forever about Infinity War to anyone who listens.
Right. That's why I cut myself off because I'm like, I could make a whole podcast out of how good Infinity War and my number one is.
I think Infinity War is one of the best cinematic movies ever made. From opening to closing, you just feel it.
The whole opening of like you see the Hulk get the crap beat out of him, and Thor's already been handled, and just sets the tone, and then they lose. Great.
So that means Guardians 3 is number 2 for me.
Yep.
For everything, I think it's the most emotional Marvel movie. Has the best fight scene in Marvel. And has a pretty good bad guy, very good bad guy. I would just say, how do you beat Thanos as a bad guy? Why Infinity War is number 1 for me.
Yeah, my number 1 is the Winter Soldier, and so the reason I put it number one, I think it's the most well done movie from like start to finish. I think the fact that it is not an Avengers movie and is as good as it is, I don't know. I just love the fact that it's that good without being an Avengers movie, and it doesn't feel like a superhero movie, which maybe for some people is a knock. For me, I like it that it's an espionage thriller, just a spy. I remember the first time watching it. Like again, we talked about first impressions, but the first time watching it, just being like completely blown out of my chair every like 30 minutes because there'd be a new twist that I didn't know about because I didn't watch the previews leading up to that movie. I had no real knowledge of Marvel. So I remember not knowing that Bucky's the Winter Soldier. I remember not knowing that S.H.I.E.L.D. was going to be bad. And then Nick Fury supposedly dies. Then, oh gosh, Nick Fury's actually alive. Dude, just all these things just happening. And then you had all the great fight scenes and emotion with it.
That's so good. Because here's the thing. I just didn't even think about this till you just said it. But like, I wondered why I've always wondered why Winter Soldier's been so high. Because for me, it's not even on my top 10. I think it's a great movie. It's just not my top 10. I have the first Captain America actually as the number 1 of the Captain Americas out of the 3. But
Blasphemy.
I just realized my thing is I know like Captain America was my favorite of the comics from Marvel that's not X-Men. So I knew quite a bit about the Winter Soldier. I kind of knew quite a bit just about just a lot of things that you said were new to you. I knew going into like those things, possibilities and etc.
Sure.
So like, I think that
makes sense. With that, I'll say too, I do love the tone. The tone of it is great, but I do see that we have less than a minute, so we've been pushed to our limits. So I'm gonna wrap it up because we're done and we don't want to start a new meeting. So that's the podcast today, man. We appreciate you guys so much. Dave, I'm glad we got to get you on. We'll do it again without a doubt. This has been fun. We love y'all. Thank you guys so much for the support. Make sure you shoot us an email. Let us know what you thought about Guardians 3. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and we can't wait to talk more. Dave, this won't be the last time we do this. Until next time, peace out, nerds. We love all you guys.
See ya. Thanks for having me.